Hello and welcome to That VidBlaster Guy. I'm Tom Sinclair, well, that VidBlaster guy, and really excited to bring you a great, you never know about these shows. Sometimes I can have what I think are going to be really just stupid subjects, and they end up being really good shows, a lot of times because of the feedback from the folks in the chat room. So if you're watching us live and you're not clued into the chat, by all means, pull up a chair and join us. It's a lot of fun. And if you're watching us on YouTube, glad you are, but join us one Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock London time for the live show. It can be a lot of fun, too. Today, we've got several things of note. First off, a little bit of news. I think we talked last week about VidBlaster getting a new streamer. Well, it looks like that's going to happen. It hasn't happened officially yet, i.e. a beta being released. But it was posted on the forum on May 3rd by Mike Versteeg, who said he's been thinking about a new streamer for a while, and streamer, he names his modules with Roman numerals after them if they're different versions. So we've got Camera 1 module and Camera 3 module. Camera 2 module kind of disappeared and morphed into Camera 3. And apparently there was a Streamer 2 module, but that never made it to a beta because he just didn't like it. And now there's a Streamer 3 module that has not been released yet, but apparently he's working on. That's the one that uses FFmpeg as the encoding engine in the same way that the current streamer, Streamer 1, uses Flash Media Live Encoder as the streaming engine, and also at one point would use the Windows encoder product. The new version 3, doesn't use Windows encoder any longer. The new streamer apparently is based on this post on May 3rd is going to have lots of options for encoders, or at least it'll use the FFmpeg, but within FFmpeg you can pick the different encoders that you would want to use in the different settings. The input settings, the output settings, the same, similar to Flash Media Live Encoder. But it's going to be really interesting, and I'll let you know just as soon as I know that a beta has been released on that, because that's going to be something we want to watch. The goal has been, of course, to get higher quality for less resources, fewer CPU cycles, and a better quality stream. And something else that sort of factors into that, and I say better quality stream, let me expound on that for just a second. Better quality stream meaning, number one, better video resolution, but number two, maybe not quite so much bandwidth used to get the same amount of resolution or same quality resolution, or even better. So that's going to be interesting to watch. CPU cycle savings are definitely what we want to do, because everybody wants to do. If you're doing standard definition, you want to move up to high definition. If you're doing 720p, you want to move up to 1080p. If you're doing 1080p, you want to go to 4K. It doesn't matter how big our boat is. We always want a boat that's just a little bit bigger. If my 20-foot boat were 24, I could do X, Y, Z. Well, I've had a 17-foot boat, and I wanted a 20. I ended up giving it away to my son, but that's a different story. So the new streamer, hopefully, based on what we see, may come out in beta form here in the next couple of weeks. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. You can check that yourself by going to the VidBlaster forum, to the download section, and see if there's a new beta download there. That's forum.vidblaster.com. The download section is the last entry on the forum. And typically they'll be numbered sequentially. The current download, the current beta version is 3.22, and that's what we're using here for this broadcast. Even though it's not an official release, it appears to be a real solid beta. So that's the news about the streamer. Coming up in just a minute, we are going to get into our main subject, which is Chroma Key and the Logitech C920 and VidBlaster, so I think you'll enjoy that. Did want to give you an update on our struggles here with snap, crackles, and pops. The video that we've been streaming and recording for the last, I don't know how many broadcasts, way too many, I'll tell you that much, has been plagued by crackles, pops, and snaps that appear to be, well, let me tell you what I know so far. I'm using an AverMedia, so excuse me, not AverMedia, an EVGA motherboard. It's the Z68 SLI Micro. And I'm also using for my mixer the Behringer X1204 USB. And about maybe 2 months ago, maybe 3, somewhere in that time period, you noticed and I noticed that we were beginning to get a little pop. And what my friend Martin Kay from Zen Video in London did some analysis on that and said basically it seemed like it was just a drop frame, or just an empty frame. And so there was just a crackle, just a as you went from skipped from frame 1 to frame 3. That was the noise that you got where frame 2 should have been. Not a VidBlaster issue. Apparently it's a hardware issue, and I think, I haven't tracked it down for sure yet, but I think it's in the motherboard. I had a similar problem with this last summer. It started out with crackles and got progressively worse to the point where the motherboard just wouldn't mother anymore. And there's nothing worse than a motherboard that won't mother. You just, what do you do with them? You send them back, that's what you do. But this one has been crackling, and it doesn't seem to be getting worse, but it's definitely not getting better. The workaround, because I'm still using the same motherboard today, and that's in my production machine for this broadcast, but the workaround has basically been to abandon the USB connections. So now, fortunately, we don't have a Skype guest in today, because otherwise we'd have to jumble their audio into the same channel with other audio. So now what we've got essentially, and I should have set up a camera on this. I didn't even think about that. Sorry about that. I've got a line in on the mixer, which is coming from a speaker out on the PC. Well, that makes sense. Sound's coming out of the PC. It's going into the mixer. And then on the mixer, I've got audio out going to the mic jack on the PC. And so I've kind of got an out and back situation, which the USB port would do automatically. I've had to use 2 cables for that. And in fact, in order to pick up both channels, actually I'm sending the audio out over the auxiliary sends. But that's a different story, because I didn't have the right cable to do it out the main out. Anyway, it's been nice to get an improvement on this. It's not a long-term fix, because it does sort of preclude us having any Skype guests come in and being able to control their audio separately. I do have the ability to control my audio, because that's just a mic, and then whatever audio comes from the PC, and so that's going to be players and the theme music you heard at the very beginning. I can control that with one of the sliders, but I don't have the ability to do that second audio channel that I did before. But if you're not doing a second audio channel, if you don't have a Skype guest, and all you have is, not all you have, but if what you have is a conventional mixer that doesn't have a USB connection, you can use that quite successfully, as we're showing off right now. Let's see. So that's the update on the snap, crackles, and pops. We do want to give a shout out to Sean Aronson with the St. Paul Saints baseball team, who talked to us today about putting VidBlaster in the press box there at the stadium in order to broadcast the games. And I understand that he might be tuning in. Sean, we're glad to have you. One other thing that I wanted to mention before we get into our main subject, And that is for those of you that have the studio or the broadcast edition and are making use of macros. Macros are wonderful. Oh, I love macros. To be able to press one button and have 6 things happen automatically is just the bomb. I'm just loving it. Just loving it. But depending on the way you set up your macros, if your macros use the switcher to refer to a particular module. For example, I've got a macro set up right now that invokes the player number 4 module. But if I were to go in and say, oh, you know, I've got too many modules here, I'm not using player number 3, I'm going to delete that one, I'm going to remove it. Well, what happens on the switcher bar is that all the other player modules, in fact, all the other modules that are higher than player number 3, will move over one step to the left. And when they do that, they'll renumber themselves on the switcher in terms of their switcher position. The player number 4 will still be player number 4, even if I eliminate player number 3, but its switcher position will shift from, in my case, from position 8 to position 7, and any macros that I have written that refer to a player in position 8 on the switcher, well, they won't do exactly what I want them to do anymore. So you want to be careful with that. If you're making a last-minute change and you've got macros involved, better not to remove a module until you know exactly what it's going to do to any of your macros. And there are some ways to get around that where you can invoke a macro or control. For example, if I wanted to display a camera, I can have the macro display that camera directly without having to go through the switcher. But there are other things like players that cannot be directly sent to the program module without going through the switcher if you're using the API. So suffice to say, with power comes responsibility. Always been thus. Always been thus. Okay, let's see how we're doing here. What I would like to do is to talk with you a little bit about the Logitech C920 Webcam, which is becoming a real standard. It's a great little cam. I've got 2 of them. I've been using them for probably a year and a half, maybe even since I started this show in July of 2012. So that would be coming up on yeah, year and a half, year and 3/4. And then making that work with the VidBlaster Chroma key. Now remember, in VidBlaster there are two different renditions of the Chroma key. In the Home Edition, there is the basic Chroma key, where all you have is a function, I think, that allows you for an auto key. But once you get up past that, you have the ability to do the advanced settings, and that's what I wanted to show you today. So let's see, let me switch over to a screen capture, and that's what the screen capture looks like. Basically, that's just an effect module, and you can see I've got it set to Chroma key. That was one of the different effects that I could choose, and I've got camera 1 as my main camera. Now, let me drag camera 1 over here so you can see that's camera 1, and that's just me in front of the green screen. And then Still Store 2, let me come down to that one, Still Store 2 is my background, and I'll just drag that in so you can see that that's here, and we'll put it right over there so it doesn't cover up. There we go. And so I've keyed out the green and put this nice picture that Martin K did for me in the background. That's essentially what Chroma key does. If I take this effect module and I right click it, and you're asking why is that green light on? That's because currently this effect module is selected as the preview on the switcher, but I'm not using preview. So if I were to click the program for this effect module, the module itself would jump back to the screen. But we're going to go back to our camera shot. There we go. All right, so we're going to right-click this module, and we're going to select Advanced Settings. You see that we've got the auto key setting, and that's the same thing as in the home version, the home edition, excuse me. But we're going to go Advanced Settings, and I tell you what, just for less confusion, let's just move these other modules out of the way so we don't have folks wondering what in the world is going on right there. Okay, so we'll go back to Advanced Settings, and you see there are lots of different settings here. You know, again, I'm not a video guy. I'm just a dad that likes to do this kind of stuff, and I'm going to make a lot of mistakes and learn from them and share with you guys my knowledge. So I am not qualified to tell you what all these different settings means, but I can show you what they do, which might be as much fun as knowing what they actually mean. You can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different settings, and then 4 different buttons down at the bottom. All right, if I click, we're going to click Auto Key, Pick a Key, Set a Key. If I click Set a Key, that brings in this menu right here, which doesn't really fit into our screen capture, and allows me to pick a particular color from the spectrum, and then, oops, let's see, can we grab this guy again? Nope. All right, well, we're just going to get him out of the way. Well, we may not get him out of the way. Let's see what we did. Did we somehow we got frozen on that one. Huh. Let's see if we can just get that out of the way. There we go. Not sure why that froze. That's interesting. I have to keep an eye on that, make sure that's not a bug. That was set a key. We're going to pick a key right now, and we'll just click the pick, and as we move our cursor into the camera window, notice how it becomes a crosshair. And when it becomes a crosshair, it allows me to pick anything in this window that I want to key out. So I can pick the yellow shirt, and it will key out the yellow. And since the green has a little bit of yellow in it, you can see the background coming through. Let's try to pick a different key. That didn't work very well. Let's pick out a flesh tone. And there's enough yellow in the flesh tone to key that out. So let's pick out the green, and of course that does it too. Now if my white balance is not good on my camera, I won't get a good key. And let me go back to this shot right here and show you what happens when my white balance is bad. I'm going to adjust my white balance, and you can see suddenly I'm invisible. Well, I'm not invisible, but I'm kind of translucent. I'm a ghost, as it were. Let me show you. We'll go back to this one right here. This is the Logitech HD Pro Webcam C920, referred to commonly as the C920. And these are the different settings in the advanced section that you can use to control the camera. I'll show you the webcam control. This is the zoom right here. This allows you to, the right sound allows you to adjust the mic so that the mic self-adjusts for different situations, but we don't ever use the mic from that camera. And then autofocus, if we had, excuse me, people that were going in and out of a scene, or we were trying to follow something, we might leave the autofocus on, but I don't want the focus to change. So I've turned that off, and you can see right here it's set to infinity. So we'll go back to the advanced settings feature, and typically when you first turn this on, right up here the right light button is checked, and so I'll check it, and that will do some automatic adjustments. And I can come down here to white balance and click it to auto, and that'll do some automatic adjustments. And when I do that, let's see how I did when I clicked it to auto. Did that help? Nah, not really. I'm still translucent. So let's go back here, and what we'll do is we're going to take all the autos off so that we can control everything. And I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to pull it to the right a little bit. In fact, why don't we move it right about to the middle, and I'll show you what that's done to me. And I'm going to go back over here and pull it back to the left, and you can see the white balance goes all the way down to kind of a ghoulish look. This is back to the middle, and then all the way over to the right. At some point it stops really having an effect. So we'll set this about right there. Is that a good look? It's hard to tell. We know that's not a good look. And this is really not how you set a white balance. You generally set a white balance with something that's white. But in this case, that gives us a really good key. Now, I say a really good key, but if you look, let's see, if you look on my shoulders right in here, you'll see that there's a little bit of a green reflection. And so we want to try to get that out. We'll go back to the camera and see if the camera can help us get that out. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll put that shot up so you can see it as I make the adjustment. And there's the difference right there. So we're going to go right to the edge right there. That's the shot we've got. We've got just a little bit of weirdness in the shirt. So we'll come back to our advanced settings, and that's where we can work on that a little bit. And I think saturation distance was the one that we wanted to work with. I'll tell you what, again, I'm gonna put the big screen up so you can see I'm working with saturation distance. And as I draw that all the way over to the right, you can see it takes out the green screen. As I draw it back to the left, you can see as soon as the green gets keyed out, the stuff shows up in my shoulder, and that's at that setting right there. Pulling it back further to the left doesn't appear to have any any effect. So saturation distance and feather is not what we want. Let's try hue distance and feather, and we'll go back to this so you can see what the hue distance works. I'm going to drag it to the left. You can see that cleared up my shoulders immediately. As I drag it more to the left, you see a bunch of video noise begin to appear. I'm going to drag it all the way to the right, and away I go. You can see just a little bit of my left arm over here. So I'll drag it back to the center and bring it all the way back in. And again, I want to find that sweet spot where I don't have a lot of noise, but where I'm not translucent at the same time. And that looks like the sweet spot right there. Now, let's see, let's go back over here. Sometimes there can be a case where my ears don't always show up. And edge shrink seems to help with that. Edge shrink. So let's go back here, and I'm going to come over here to edge shrink and watch the tips of my ears and see what happens to them. All of a sudden, I have no ears. Well, they're there, but they're just like taped to the side of my head. And as I move edge shrink back over to the left, you can see that more and more volume is sort of added to me. Now, sometimes if your green screen is too close to you, you'll get a reflection off of that green screen, and that'll show up in the ears and along the neck and sometimes on the shoulders. Sometimes there'll be a little hint of it in the hair. There was a football show on last fall, a coach's football show, and the coach was bald, and the guy that was interviewing him was bald. And they had the lights set up, number one, so that each one had this big glaring white circle on their forehead, and then they must have had some light set up behind them somehow, or they were too close to the green screen or something. And so they ended up having this green halo along the sides, and so with the green halo and the white headlight, it was hilarious. I emailed the show and tried to get them to adjust it. I was like, guys, you're making this guy look like a clown. But I don't know if they ever paid any attention to me or heard anything. Anyway, so we're talking about edge shrink, and by drawing that to the right, I can make the shrink go tighter by drawing it back. Oops, sorry, wrong one. By drawing it back to the left, I can make the shrink not so shrunk. And again, that's just something you want to play with. Some of the other settings that you might be interested in are spill distance and feather. So let's see, if we drag that all the way to the left, you can see I turned blue. So obviously we don't want that. Sometimes, depending on your camera, the spill distance and feather can help you, between that and the white balance, you can kind of get things dialed in a little bit. Again, this is just trial and error on my part. This is not because I know what I'm doing. And let's go back and we'll look at value distance and feather. And you can see that has to do with taking the key out. I'll show you what that looks like full screen as we now have a gray background. Now we have a full background. And then, not the last one, but actually the first one here is Chroma blur, horizontal and vertical. And I don't think that's going to have a whole lot of effect here. Yeah, we can go back and forth on horizontal and back and forth on vertical. Doesn't seem to make a whole lot of difference with our C920. Now, with the C920, there's some other settings, and depending on the lighting in your studio, lighting is just critical. The lighting that I've got right now, I've got 6, 7, I've got 8 different lights going on. As you know, I wear glasses, and so I tried very hard. Let's see, there's a sweet spot somewhere right there in the middle, to have a shot where I'm not getting a reflection from my screens. I've got 3 monitors in front of me. I've got 3 lights to my right, 3 lights to my left, a light overhead up in front, and then a light directly behind me. You can see the effect of the light behind me. That gives me the halo effect. Don't be fooled by the halo, I'm not the halo kind of guy. The light in front of me just helps to illuminate a little bit of the area under my chin that otherwise would be in shadow, I think. And then the lights on either side, 2 on this side and 2 on this side, are both pointing at the green screen to make sure that it's evenly lit and well lit. And then a light in the center right about here that's the light that you can see when I turn my head. That's the light that focuses in on me to illuminate me. So basically, I'm not looking for a dramatic effect where I have, a shadow on one side of me to make me appeal more glamorous or more dramatic, but rather I just want to be able to be seen. I don't have any special desire other than that. But in the Logitech controls, I can control the color intensity, the contrast, the brightness, the gain, and the exposure. And let me show you what those do. And we're going to do this without the chroma key so that you can see a little bit more easily. I'm going to start at the top with the exposure. And this is like in a traditional camera where you would set the exposure. And here I am grossly overexposed. And then now I'm underexposed. And I'm going to use right light setting to set the exposure the way it was. And let me show you how I did that. This is the right light setting. I had let's turn the gain off. I had underexposed myself to give this picture, and so I just simply let the Logitech choose the right exposure, and then I turned it off. What the gain does, we'll go back here and you can see what gain does, is gain has a similar effect, and we'll put that back on auto, and then we'll turn it off of auto. And this is what I did, is I blew it right up there, so I blew myself out, put it on auto where it adjusted back, and now we'll turn it off so that those are fixed. brightness, and we'll come back and let you see what the brightness does. If I increase the brightness, it has a similar effect to increasing the exposure. And as I decrease the brightness, you can see it has that effect. So let's see if we can find a good, what looks like a good level of brightness right about there, maybe? There, somewhere in there. And then if I come down to the contrast, I can increase the contrast. You can have all sorts of great effects with this. And then the color intensity. And we can go all the way to what almost seems to be black and white. And if you get it messed up and you just can't seem to get a good look, when all else fails, come back and hit right light and auto, and that will take care of your white balance, your exposure, and your gain. And if you're not happy with the way the brightness, contrast, and color intensity worked, you can just restore to defaults, and that puts everything in the middle, and then we can kind of work it out from there. So we'll set our white balance the way we want it first. Looks like right about there, maybe. Let's do with a little less color intensity. I will tell you, sometimes it can take quite a while to get it the way you want it. So, yeah, let's turn the gain way down. Bump up the exposure a notch. And this is not the kind of thing that you should try during the middle of a show. Oh my goodness. This is too much fun. Too much fun. Alright. We'll just cancel all those. We're not going to save our changes. See if it goes back. Did it go back to where it was? No, it didn't. Oh my goodness. Alright, let's see. One other little trick that comes along with this. I'll just pull the camera module into this shot so you can see it. That's the camera module. If I hold down the control key and the shift key and then right click here, it's just off screen, but there's an extra setting called debug that pops out and then allows me to pick up the property page, which is for my C920, and I'll pull that over there for you so that we can get all our settings back. Our right sound is off, our autofocus is off, our zoom is about where we want it, I think. And then we will go to advanced settings. And they're about where we left them just a minute ago. So we will turn those back off and come back to the camera shot. And start with the white balance. I will say, once you get it the way you like it, save it. The other thing that's worth noting is that, oh, looks like I picked up a little fuzz here while I was making the adjustment, so let's see if we can adjust out that fuzz. Bring it back up so you can see. Oh, there's still a little fuzz. A little noise there. Can you see noise? Looks like there might be a little noise right in there. And again, sometimes that's a white balance adjustment. Let's try one more time to get that white balance the way we want it. Well, I don't have it quite the way I want, but I'm not going to spend all your time doing that. That's the basic concept of using the advanced settings in VidBlaster together with the settings in the Logitech C920 to, between the two of those, find the right balance so that you get a good key. And a good key in my mind is a key that has a good, clear delineation between the subject and the background, especially when it comes to little odd shapes like around the ears. The hair, sometimes the hair, especially if somebody's got puffy hair, that makes it a little tough because sometimes the green gets refracted, and you can end up seeing the green instead of seeing the background that's been inserted behind. I hope that was helpful. And in some ways, it definitely was an example of what not to do, which is to try to adjust your color during the middle of a broadcast. Try to get all that set up. And in fact, it's a really good idea to get it set and then record it and make sure it looks good in your recordings, and then stream it to another PC and check that other PC and make sure that that's right. Because I've got 3 monitors in front of me. They're all adjusted differently. The monitor to my right, I think, has the closest adjustment to the other PCs in the house, and so tends to look a little bit more like me than the one that's in front of me. So that's kind of the quick and dirty skinny on the C920 and the advanced settings in the Chroma key in VidBlaster. And that's about it for this segment. We're going to take a break and come back with segment 2, which will be Streaming Idiots, in just a minute. If you're watching us live, hang around. If you're watching us on YouTube, we will post the Streaming Idiots segment on Friday afternoon so that you've got something neat to watch for the weekend. Oh, and full disclosure, I need to mention that I am a VidBlaster reseller, and therefore, this is part of my effort to sell the VidBlaster product. If you're interested in purchasing VidBlaster, you can go to the store at thatvidblasterguy.com and purchase it and get personal support from me, Tom Sinclair, that VidBlaster guy. Be happy to help you. So we're going to head out, and we'll see you next week, 3 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock in London, for another episode of That VidBlaster Guy. And so long.